Welcome to the Efed Podcast, a podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby, where the wrestling is written and the characters are real. I'm your host, Mike the Unlikely, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today here on the Atomic Dropcast Network. It's Monday, and that means it's Efed Podcast Day. What's going on out there in Efed world? Hope you guys are doing well this week. I myself am dipping my toes back into the roleplay arena. My good buddy Stevie decided to come out of retirement, and so the Hollywood Bruvs are back, baby! Follow our accounts at Hollywood Bruvs on Twitter. If you guys are digging the show, go ahead and subscribe on whatever platform you're using. Give us a review, and we would greatly appreciate it. If you want to interact with us, you can find us on Twitter at the Efed Podcast. We've got a Discord server you can be a part of. We're open to hearing from you. We want to hear your suggestions, your constructive criticisms, and your baseless accusations. This week on the show, we've got the Efed Question of the Week, brought to you by the EWC. We've got a familiar face on the pod this week, or voice rather. Jan Van Der Roost is on the pod for the first time since episode 3's promo segment. This time we're sitting down to talk about his history in the game and how the Squires Academy evolved into what it is today. Stay tuned for that. It's a great interview, and of course, as always, we've got the Feds list. If you have some big news, a big show, or something you want to advertise, get at us on Twitter at the Efed Podcast to discuss how we can help you. Before we get into the show, let's hear from our sponsors.
If we can turn back the clock of time, if we can rotate it back almost 20 years ago.
A real Donnybrook, that's going to be. Nicely executed, and down to the canvas. Here comes, all hell to the break.
Welcome to the Atomic Dropcast, your weekly knee to the ass bone for your ear holes. I am Brian, and alongside my co-host Mikey.
Hey everybody. What we're doing here is we're taking a look back at the wrestling and the angles of yesteryear from a new perspective as adults. We're rewatching the wrestling we watched as kids with a couple of drinks in our hands, and we have a great time. Check us out over at atomicdropcast.com or go to YouTube and check out the Atomic Dropcast. Give it a search. We're dropping one episode a week for the next 30 plus weeks. Check it out. It's the re-release of the Atomic Dropcast. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, atomicdropcast.com. It's time for the Feds list. Splat Sports is looking to do a 24-hour WrestleWorld event, planning to stream the event live on Splat from 6 locations around the world, looking for wrestling, MMA, or boxing feds who would like to contribute. We would also love to see dream matches from individual handlers. Please contact at Splatpoint on Twitter for more information. Do you need a home? Do you need a 2K Fed to join? Well, look no further. Lionheart Wrestling is a PS4 2K Fed that is a storytelling and original Fed. We here at LHW want to give opportunity and work in the ring to showcase who you are in the world of Efed Wrestling. LHW is work rate and for all the workhorses to gain not only championships, but gain respect in the Lion's Den. Will you be the king of this jungle? Come join LHW. We are always open to new talent at LH Wrestling 1 on Twitter. Shrouded Enigma Entertainment, run by Jennifer Enigma, aka Mike Sanzone / Mike Maddox. They have an upcoming 40-person battle royal in the new year, which is going to take place on a cruise ship. All new handlers are welcome to participate, or they can simply check it out. Here are a few legends in the game returning, also a few belts up for grabs, and the winner also gets a shot at the world champion, Brian Blades, on the pay-per-view titled Atrocity. The site is seewrestling.com. Thanks a bunch. The Cruel Summer Open is an interfed round-robin tournament taking place this June. It has opened its boards and is now accepting applications. They plan to tentatively have 10 wrestlers represent 10 different feds, but as they always say, the card is subject to change. They're going to compete against their peers for the Cruel Summer Championship and represent your Fed with pride. Host FPV can be reached at Cruel Summer Open on Twitter, and the link is cruelsummeropen.proboards.com. Hope to see you there. Introducing the HWF, the Headline Wrestling Federation, the next level of online wrestling entertainment. HWF isn't your traditional Efed. Owned and operated and written by one person, HWF simulates a real-world champion to provide a realistic experience for his audience. HWF debuts on Sunday, January 19th with the All or Nothing pay-per-view, followed by the premiere of weekly television show Overdrive on Thursday, January 23rd. TheHWF.com, and the Twitter is @TheHWF. The Championship Wrestling Federation is a role-play fed looking for all kinds of wrestlers, but handlers who are reliable, interested, and willing to put in the work to help make CWF the best are highly encouraged to apply. Check out cwf.ewmania.com/index.php. Action Wrestling is a role-play fed that's been around for about a year and a half. Never a late show, very encouraging and inclusive community, booked by someone who runs an indie fed in real life, a good range of divisions ranging from 700 to 4,000 words. They're always looking for new talent to join the fray, whether it be faces, heels, singles, tag teams, or micro writers. Check them out at actionwrestling.freeforums.net.
Defiance, an angle fed boasting 8 years of continuous fantasy wrestling. Defiance offers opportunities for original characters, micros, a standalone website utilizing Backstage 3 script, and a forum hosted on the long-running fwrestling.com, as well as a roster full of some of the most experienced writers in the game. Come see for yourself at defiancewrestling.com. That's defiancewrestling.com.
It's time for the EFED Question of the Week, brought to you by the EWC. The Extreme Wrestling Corporation is the game's longest-running role-play EFED, having been established in 1997. With over 1,000 active role players across 4 unique brands, the EWC offers opt-in booking on all of its bi-weekly shows. It's home to Stranglemania and the 4-day wrestling festival known as WrestleFest. The EWC is built on its welcoming community, with zero bias, no drama. All styles are welcome. Come check out the EWC today at EWC4life.com. That's EWC, the number 4, life.com. This week's EFED question of the week is, if you could add or remove one rule from e-wrestling, what would it be? At XBlackbeard. He would add, if you agree to an angle, you show up. And he would remove, quote, realistic gimmicks. I'd get turned down from joining feds because a pirate isn't, quote, realistic. They have a zombie, a vampire, murderers, drug dealers, and prostitutes all doing stuff on national TV, but the pirate is unrealistic. It's a great point, Blackbeard. We're playing a creative writing sport. People should have a more open mind to different characters. At Hero Highspot. I would have to say pick-based restrictions to an extent. Removing the restrictions on pick bases. I wish you'd expand on that one a little bit, buddy. But I can see where you're going. At RP Dan Ryan. He would add the rule, emotional maturity. Almost a benchmark for new handlers. At Booby Dean. That flaking is frowned upon. And the other one would be opponent focus. I don't want to read what my opponent writes about me. It'll probably be that I'm fat and because I wasn't aware. Oh. Deadlines. I think deadlines should be whenever I feel like posting as well. Classic Bobby Dean. At User Poets. Pita. He would remove Twitter lesbians. And finally, at JFK_Kendricks, my good buddy Stevie, he would remove writing from e-wrestling. If I could just play the game without writing, it'd be great. All right, guys, thanks for answering this week's question of the week. And to answer yourself and make an impact on next week's show, go to Twitter and follow us at the Efed Podcast, and we pin our Efed question of the week right there on the top of the profile. Welcome back to another edition of the Efed Podcast interview series. This week we're joined by Chris, the handler of Jan Van Der Roost, and you can find him on Twitter at JVD Rooster, owner of the Squires Academy. Chris, how we doing?
Doing fine tonight. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us on the Efed Podcast.
Glad to be a part of it. Saw that it was one of those things that when I wasn't sure how well it was going to work out, but I started listening to the first couple of them, I was like, okay, this is going to be good. So I had to be a part of it.
Good. Glad to hear that. You've been with us since the beginning. When we first got up on Twitter, you were one of our first follows backs. So we appreciate that. We appreciate all the retweets and the support you guys have been giving us over at Squires Academy.
Not a problem. Glad to help.
Good deal. All right, Chris, how did you get into professional wrestling?
Oh, probably my mistake. The first time I ever saw professional wrestling was on television. I was probably 7. So that puts me a little before the rock and wrestling era.
Okay.
I remember growing up and seeing, if I remember right, let's see, that would be Midwest. So you'd be looking at the guys like Bobo Brazil and Dick the Bruiser. And then when I turned about 10, I moved down into the Mid-Atlantic area. So I ended up being very well versed in Jim Crockett Promotions and the Horsemen and Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, the Russians. You know, it was Saturday morning, 10:30. They had a show on one of the local stations, and that was really my get into being from down the southern area. It was more NWA than WCW or WWE or AWA or anything else. But I also remember there was one night when I was, let's say, 12, and I had wrestling from WCW's or NWA Saturday night on TBS, starting at 6:05, and then you run into all these other different little promotions, and they had, it was my first little dose of Japanese wrestling, and it was like, okay, I found my thing, and then it's one of those things that you start listening and talking to people, and it's like, okay, you figure out if you have wrestling people around you or not. So one of the first live shows I ever went to was actually a pay-per-view.
Wow.
Super Brawl 3.
Really?
CW.
That's awesome.
Sting versus Vader in a strap match. And it was a little surrealistic because the location where it's at holds about 4,000 people. But the production made it look like that there was 25,000 people and everything else. But it was like, wait a minute. I'm sitting on the front row of the second tier. I paid $10. Me and 3 of my buddies are sitting here. We're watching, and we're on pay-per-view. So, but that really got me into it even more. Going to the shows. But a house show is just absolutely awesome to go to. So if anybody ever has a chance to go to shows, whether it's WWE or AEW or Impact or whoever, or even some of the local shows, go to them. But go to the ones that aren't televised, because you will see 10 times better action and more play between the people that are in the ring and even out of the ring and the fans. That's the fun part.
That's great. Back in, are you talking about the Indianapolis territory with Dick the Bruiser?
Yep.
Yeah.
Indianapolis.
That's insane.
I grew up.
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
grew up in Indianapolis. I'm from Indiana. I was there till about I was 10 or 11, and I moved down to just outside the Charlotte, North Carolina area. So
That's perfect age for the Horsemen.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and it was Flair country and the Midnight Rider and the superpowers and I remember reading the Charlotte Observer when Magnum had his car accident, and it was one of those things. Was like, okay, life took on something else because Magnum TA was groomed. And you could see it. I couldn't see it then, but when you're 10 or 11, you don't see it. But when you look back on it, and you're like, okay, TA Magnum was going to be the next guy.
The guy, yep.
He was going to be the next guy, and then it's one of those things that, okay, you have this big accident, and it's like, ooh, what do they do now? I was too young to know about Flair's accident, the airplane accident that happened right. I was 1 then, so and things like that. But it took me a little while to get used to understanding that it was more of a show than it was real life,
Right.
But that's that's part of the fun of it, though. When you go to a show and you interact with people, and then you have kids around you, and you have things like that go on. So that it's a show, or what's going on, but they don't. But you still keep playing along, so you don't want to ruin the mystique.
Absolutely. And you're talking about, as a kid, you don't know that Magnum's going to be the next guy, but I think you do, because if they build him the right way and they promote it the right way, you know who the next guy is, even when you're an adolescent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I remember Edge and Christian talking about when they were at Skydome to watch Warrior and Hogan. You had the idea, okay, Warrior's going to be the next guy. Magnum was going to be the next guy. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
It's Jan is really me. It's the character itself didn't start out to be me.
But they always become you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because Jan, the character, has been in wrestling 25 years. That puts him in 1994. That was really when I started my Efed work. Was 25 years ago. Now, he wasn't my first character. He's actually my first character that I ever started on Twitter.
Well, let me stop you there. We're not going to get into that just yet. I'm going to slow you down. Pump the brakes just a minute. So, okay.
Well, it all ties in together, so that's why I said that.
I know. I can ask you one question, and I feel like you're just going to take the interview and go. I like it. It's going to be a great interview. So, who are your favorites back then, and who are your favorites today? Overall favorites, all time. Give me 3 favorites all time.
3 favorites all time. Magnum was 1.
Okay.
I always connected with Magnum TA. I really liked CM Punk, just because of he wasn't supposed to be there.
Sure.
At first I caught on to him late. I saw him when he was in TNA. I saw him a little bit after that. I heard about him more than anything else. And of course, he blew up in ECW, blew up in WWE, I really enjoyed Edge's character going from the silent guy to somebody who really had it.
He reeked of awesomeness.
Oh, absolutely. That was, how many other people could get over by playing the kazoo?
It was amazing. And the giant foam hats. I love the 5-second poses. That was my era.
Yeah, and that, they took that off. Reading his book, it was like, you heard all the war stories, you read all the stuff, and you got this, and he was like, you know what, you know, it's it's amazing how he started out at one point and he's come full circle. I mean, he lives like 2 hours from the house, so
Yeah.
he's in Nashville, North Carolina, and from what I can tell, he looks to be good. I'm going to be one of the naysayers, and I don't want to see him back in the ring. He may be cleared and maybe this, but he went out on top. And I don't think that you can move that view of him walking out, leaving the title in the ring, and I don't think you can overcome that. He may win the title again if he does become active again, but I just don't see it. Me seeing him, and they were smart to give him a live mic on that night, and you saw the fans, whether they were 3, whether they were 33, whether they were 83, everybody there broke. The character, you saw a lot of Adam Copeland there, not Edge. And as he said, we grew up, a lot of the people grew up with him. A lot of people saw him when he was, when he wasn't, and now he is. I just don't know. Like I said, I don't know if he can ever jump up above that again. But, so you kind of got errors there. But I was also a Michaels fan. I was also a big Raven fan. I also like Sandman and some of the guys from ECW, because it's not just one type. It's not just one thing. And that's the beauty of wrestling. You get guys who are Rey Mysterio size. You get guys who are Big Show size, and everybody in between. So that's because that's what you have in the stands. You have the 3-year-old who just knows John Cena because she sees all the colors.
Right.
People, all the people who love all the luchadors because of the masks, that new wave style of how everybody likes to be, the old Japanese strong style or whatever you want to call it, stiff, and it plays to certain different people, and that's that's part of wrestling. That's part of us.
It's like you said earlier, you found your thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you go to, if you go to a live show, you see people who have, you see those casuals, you see those lifers, you see everybody in between, and you may not know a soul there, but you go to an arena, you've got 15, you go to a big show or you go to a medium show, you could have 1,000 of your closest friends there or 15,000 of your closest friends there, or they had 40,000 of your closest friends in the Egg Dome this weekend. But you're all wrestling people, so you're all friends, you're all family.
Go ahead and touch on how you found e-wrestling and your early character history.
I found e-wrestling by mistake.
I think
was
we
really
all do.
looking.
That's the way. That seems to be a common thread.
Yeah. Well, we find it. We're looking for different things. It's like we're finding what new stuff can we find about this character? What new stuff can we find about this? And then you get into this. Oh, wait a minute. You get into the fan fiction stuff, and it's like, okay, wait, that's not really Diesel. So now you got to delve into it a little deeper, and then you figure out, okay, well, wait a minute, this is like make believe, but this isn't make believe, but it is. Okay, well, wait a minute. Then you've got, when I started, it was, I started on the Yahoo groups, I started on the ICQs, I started on IRC. There was no visuals. My first character was completely in my head. I knew kind of what he wanted to be. I knew kind of the look of it. It was a kind of a combination of old school Diesel with the demeanor of the Silent Undertaker. He was a big guy, and my first character was the Demolition Man, Jack Riker, and I was a big Star Trek fan, so the Riker part came in. Demolition Man movie had just come out, so I was big on that. I made the guy. He was, Jack was 7'1" and 315. It's very Nash-like, very Taker-like. And then it was one of those, okay, let's delve into it a little more. What does he do? Okay, he's big, he's tall. Well, let's give him something different. And at that time, Stan Lariat Hansen was using the heart punch that Blackjack Mulligan had made famous. Okay, well, let's give this guy a guy 7'1", 320, 315, 325 with a heart punch. Okay, that's a good finisher. Okay, well, let's delve into that more. You got to have somebody who's going to be with him. So he had a younger guy, a smaller guy, quick guy. His name was Blade, and then from there it builds on and builds on and builds on. For some people, if I do my best here to try to keep my characters separate. Right now I have 5 characters that I use on Twitter, not including anything for the Squires Academies or anything like that. But each one of them are completely different, and I do my best to try to keep them separate. But some people may recognize that that last name of Riker, because one of my characters is Jack's daughter, Jana Riker. And that adds a whole new storyline to go along with, because Jack and Jan knew each other. And they wrestled overseas together, and they wrestled against each other. They wrestled for each other. And then you add, I can splice in the old Fed that I used to run, which I didn't start running it. Defiant Wrestling Federation was one of the first federations I found. And the gentleman who was running it, after about a year, asked me if I wanted to help, and I started writing matches. And then we brought in a couple other guys, and then Jason had to leave, and so myself and 2 other guys handled Defiant Wrestling for 8-9 years. And then we all age up. We all get lives. We all become adults, and then we have to do adult stuff.
Absolutely.
But then, when I started Jan was a character that I built in that off time. I'd closed Defiant. I'd really stepped away from any Efed wrestling, but you never step away. It's in your blood. You live it. So Jan became probably the first character I ever came up with that was based solely on the song. His theme, Rooster from Alice in Chains. I heard the song. I came up with the character. Okay, I need to figure out how I'm going to make this character. How do I make the Rooster? How do I make a guy who doesn't die? How do I make a guy who's been in this business forever? And it just follows along. But then, like I said, you add in little twists and turns, and you add in backstories with Jan and Jack and Jana and all these things come all together, and it's like I can honestly say that I remember what I was doing with Jack 25 years ago because the stories live, the characters live, and it gets fun that way. It's like when you're watching wrestling. You remember when Lex Luger power slammed Yokozuna on the Intrepid. You remember when Flair defeated Vader. You remember when Warrior beat Hogan and had both titles. the Iron Man match from Hitman and Shawn Michaels that ended up going in overtime. If you can connect those stories and connect your characters and connect everything together, it just
Magic.
it brings a life to its own. Yeah. It's magic. That's a good word for it. It is magic.
So talk to us about some of the better rivalries for JVD.
JVD started in Fight One and worked there for a little bit, and then moved over to Boardwalk for a little bit.
Okay, I'm familiar with Boardwalk.
Boardwalk Wrestling. I actually was working there. I worked for Fight One for a little bit, and it didn't click. And that's what it takes. Sometimes it doesn't click, so you have to find another place. So I worked for Boardwalk for about a year until they closed. And from there, it was, moving on into other places. Rivalries, you'd say. Jan worked with a lot of people. Jan didn't go over a lot of times. But as that vested veteran, he really didn't need to, So it's more about, and I've kind of grown accustomed to that now. Jan Van Der Roost doesn't need the win, but if he can elevate somebody, then that's what we'll do. There's a lot of characters that do 1 offs or 2 offs or 3 offs or something like that, or they come in for a little bit, and that's how I'm running Jan now. Jan was really not supposed to be as coach as he is now. So, to say I had rivals or anything else, there's wasn't any huge rivalries. There's one, but I think that's less, that is less Jan Van Der Roost and the character. I think that's more handler and handler, but that's a completely different story to go.
Talk to us about the formation of the Squires Academy, and talk to us about what it is. I'm not familiar with the concept of a training school or a refresher school or whatever it is that you guys are doing over there. I've been following on Twitter. I stumbled upon the website and saw the whole web of locations and franchises, I guess, of what Squires is. So kind of talk us through that, what it is and how it works.
Squires Wrestling Academy started out as simply a place that Jan could use as a background for promos. You always have, when you're trying to work out a promo or trying to work out a location, you're constantly in mode of, okay, how can I keep this fresh? How can I keep this up?
Yeah.
How can I keep this working? So when I was in Boardwalk with Jan, he, that was based in Atlantic City, it made sense to have a location to work with. So Jan ended up buying a condo in Ventnor, which is 10 minutes down the road. He gets his pizza from certain places that are right there. I'm very verbose. I'm very detail oriented. So I went back and forth. Okay, what can I do? What can I do? And what if we have someplace like a gym or a training academy or something that Jan wants to work out? Okay, so then it built to, let's have Jan work with people who want to go into wrestling. And one of the characters that and I'm drawing a blank because it's been a couple years. One of the characters that another handler wanted to use that we brought into Boardwalk was this extremely green character. And it was using a Bo Dallas pick base. So it made sense. Okay, well, Jan has Squires. He's using it to train himself. Well, what if he trains somebody else? So then that became the first character from another handler to be used at Squires. Squires and then from there, the handler for Alan Envy contacted me and said, hey, I'd like to do something to keep Alan Envy, the character alive. What if we do something out at another location? Would you be okay with that? Well, yeah, I'm not upset about having a different location. So let's go out west. So we went to San Diego. So the handler for Doug Castle came to me and said, hey, I have a character I want to start, Doug Castle. I'm a big Dan the Beast Severn fan. It would make sense a little bit. He's an older wrestler. Hey, what if Doug Castle and Jan used to wrestle together as well, so they know each other. How about if we started another Squires? Okay, so Squires in Castleton, which is outside of Windsor, Ontario, started because of that. Area Price's handler came to me and said, well, let's do something else. Well, where are you based out of? Well, let's do Vancouver. So, Detroit, Vancouver, San Diego, Atlantic City, Miami, all the places that were there for Squires were just ideas that people came to me with. And then some of the others, like Jan, one of Jan's biggest things was he may be Dutch, but he wrestled in South Africa. So we made a location in South Africa. He wrestled a lot of stuff in Asia. Well, I don't want to do Tokyo. I don't want to do this. Well, what about Macau? Because nobody knows where Macau is, but Macau is in Southeast China, and it's like the Vegas of the Far East. Okay, well, that makes sense. Let's put him in there, and that's where he used to wrestle. So now we have a base there. So out of all, realistically, there's probably 7 of the academies that aren't run by me, including one that actually just left. Squires Midway was with the Danielsons, and the Danielsons came to me and said, well, let's do something together for a little bit. And then they came up with their own idea. Well, what if we bought back the Danielson gym? Okay, it sounds great, but it's an idea. The idea behind Squires originally was just to give Jan and others a chance to build something new, or James Edwards' handler, or Amber Ryan's handler, or some of the other handlers came and said, well, what if we, James Edwards was the first one who said, I really like this concept, but I need, what would be a good way to do it? Well, what if James is learning something new, learning a new strike, learning a new submission? Okay, well, there's an in hook. Amber Ryan would do the same thing. And even Dexter Severin came over and we did an angle where we were running 5 different feds, and we were matched up in 5 different feds, 5 different matches. It was Jan versus Dexter, so I guess that would be the big rivalry. But one of his promos was that he crashed at Squires and attacked Jan in front of all of his students. There's a hook, but realistically, Squires is now gone. The running joke is Squires is the McDonald's of wrestling academy, and I get the joke about people saying, well, you're training these kids for 6 weeks or 8 weeks and putting them out. Yeah, that's right. But if you take a look at most of the modern schools, when Storm had his, the Dudleys have theirs, the Wild Samoans, and a lot of these others, they're in for 2, 3, 4 months, and then they let them go. But often they go to another school, or they go to get, more work somewhere else. That's the biggest base now for Squires. So yeah, I had, just in the last 2 days, I had 2 people come and say, hey, I have enhancement talents that I want to start. They want to learn. I want to build them from scratch, so that there's not predetermined thing of, oh, I'm the world's greatest from this location, but now I'm here and here, but now I'm here and I'm nobody. And that's how Jan was. Jan had, I never said that he had these titles and this and stuff. These, numerous accolades, far too much to mention. The only thing I always portrayed Jan as was he's a 22-year veteran. Okay. That enough gives me enough clout to walk in and say, okay, where's the one place that Jan's never worked? Jan's never worked in North America. That was the initial hook. There was reason why Jan went to North America. It had to do with family. So there's the hook. And now 3 years later, he's now 25 years. He's got Squires. He's got all of these locations, and he has a manager who handles the money part. So that way Jan just has to worry about the ring part, talking about promos, talking about in-ring stuff, talking about this, talking about that. But, the characters of being, there's not the website there on the WordPress site is all of those characters were ones that came in through Squires. Most of them aren't mine. I can count one that is, the first one, Robbie Raider. He's my character. He was the first guy that I wanted to build because I needed somebody other than Jan to work. Well, it would make sense that my first Squire would be my first knight, would be my character. But everybody else on that list, there's 40 others on that list right now. They're not mine. They're somebody else's. And some of them have gone better. Some of them have gone worse. Some of them aren't being used anymore. But then you have like Derek LaBelle, who's being used over in Union Grand Prix, the MMA group. You've got, like I said, Robbie's working in EWC. You've got countless others, the Danielsons and the, like I said, there are too many to mention on it. But it's one of those things that it just goes across the board. It's not for me.
It's amazing that all of this started for a background for a promo, and it evolved into an entire story, an entire process, an entire franchise.
Absolutely. And like I said, I get the whole joke about the McDonald's of wrestling, but McDonald's has sold 1 billion, so I guess I can sell 40. So
I like it. All right, man. Are you ready for some Twitter questions?
Shoot.
All right. From Bully Demise, what era did you start watching wrestling? We kind of touched on that. What years were those?
That would have been 81, 82 would have been the first ones with Dick the Bruiser and Bobo Brazil. So I was pre-Rock and Wrestling era, but I grew up more NWA than WWF. So I grew up
on wrestling.
Yeah, I've gone through all of the eras, and it's one of those things that you're used to one era, or you're used to one type, but then you see another, and it's like, you know what? They don't all have to be the same. I got the hooks from NWA. It was more traditional wrestling, more sport, and I got the hooks from WWF down WWE. It's more entertainment, and then ECW became more hardcore, and then you had everything else. It's so. To put it in perspective, let's go just right at that edge of WrestleMania 1, and just before that. That's when I started.
Okay. Very good. At Rick Dick DPW, he wants to know if your mom's hot. He's going to give you that because he's given it to every guest I've had.
Yeah. My mom is still with my dad. She just turned 79. And that was on the 1st. So she was a New Year's baby.
Hey, happy birthday.
Mama Van Der Roost is 79.
Next question, of course, is she single? And you've already answered she's not.
Unfortunately, no. Papa Van Der Roost is still alive. So, and they're still together. So.
All right. So his real question is, when you cut a trash talk promo, do you weave it into a story, or do you instead focus on the character flaws of an opponent? He says trash talk promos are important to well-planned feuds, and writing them can be a chore. I'm curious on what's your approach.
I'm absolutely horrible at trash talk. but that's also why I play faces.
Absolutely.
I can play a heel. One of the groups that I had when I was running Defiant, which was an angle fed.
That's tripping me out because Defiance Wrestling now is an angle.
I know that. Defiant Wrestling Federation, the DWF, was an angle fed. It was an angle fed before we really knew it was an angle fed. We did role plays, we did the other stuff, but we still had a timeline on what we wanted to do. We ran 5 pay-per-views a year. We had 8 to 12 weeks between each pay-per-views. We had storylines that ran all the way through. And one of the biggest storylines that we had, one of the big storylines that I was running with one was I had this group called the Cult. And the Cult were ultra heels. Even the heels hated these guys. And it was one of those that it was very Wyatt family-esque. Okay? Not as much with the lights or anything else, but when you had the crowd chanting "Save us," and that he was coming and this and that. So I could play the heel, but I'm horrible at trash talk. So I tend to focus on the character. I tend to focus on the character flaws. I tend to focus more on Jan, or in this case on Robbie or on Jana, on what they can do best or better than what my opponent can do. Anybody can walk in and say, "You suck, and this is why."
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody can say, "You're old, you're slow, you're decrepit, you're this, you're that." But tell me why. Okay. Yeah, Jan's had 2 broken necks. Yeah, Jan's 45. Yeah, Jan's this. Yeah, Jan's that. But he knows more than you do. I've even used this before. I've been wrestling longer than you've been alive. So how are you expecting to win a match against somebody who knows more moves than you even know moves? I know counters to moves and counters to those moves, and you barely know the first move. It's like Gorilla Monsoon used to say he doesn't know his a wrist lock from a wristwatch. That's how I go at somebody. So trash talk is great, but if you can take that plot, if you can take that character and systematically disassemble them one by one, that's 10 times better than saying you suck and that's it.
Yep.
So I would say set your promo, shoot hard, and if you're a heel, shoot badly. Tell them that they're tell me that I'm the worst thing ever. Tell me that that I don't even belong in the same group as you. I don't even belong in the same ring as you. But you don't need to be vulgar or crass about it. Just shoot from the hip. You can be a heel and not have to be demeaning. Just be a heel. And if you're a face, you don't have to drop into that lowest common denominator of, going for the low-hanging fruit. Just play above board, smile while you're doing the promo, and move with it. So I would say work on character, less on trash, and the plot will work itself in. Whether you're learning a new promo, whether you're learning a new move, or whether you're just eating a pizza at the local pizza parlor. You can work millions of different things in to a promo and make it all work.
Very good. Finally, we got at Hero High Spot. He wants to know the favorite thing about Efeding when you first started. What hooked you?
The idea that my character, that my work was being brought to life. We all have the imagination. We all have the idea, the fantasy, okay, of being a wrestler. I think there's actually a couple that have moved on beyond that, that have gone from not just being the Efed wrestler, they're a real wrestler. The first one that pops up that I remember is Jordan Grace. That she started out as an Efed writer and built the character and made the character. And now she's on Impact Wrestling. She's on different other locations. It's a matter of seeing that character and when you get some really good writers and get some really good bookers and get some really good people to work with, in a Fed, in a group, in a writing group, you'd say, or whatever. When you can find good people to work with, and your character comes to life, it really just hooks you and it keeps you there. And I had some good people that I started with when I started with Jack, and then I had some good people that worked with me when we were running Defiant. And I got lucky when I started working with Jan, that I found a couple really good writers to work with, and it begat more and begat more and begat more, and that's what I am now. Is I'm not looking for accolades. I'm just looking for people to work with. The handler for Robbie's wife, Candy, she and I go back to 2 years ago. And when you can have somebody you can write with for 2 or 2.5 or 3 years constantly, and you don't lose anything, and we talk daily. It's not a matter of, we don't have to talk all the time, and we don't always talk about wrestling. We talk about life. But when you can find somebody who can help you make that character and help you, just step forward a little bit, that's the part that got me hooked, and that's the part that keeps me going. I mean, I work 2 jobs. I use the e-fedding as a break from reality. I do a lot of stuff in my downtime. I do a lot of stuff while I'm at work. I mean, I walked out and I catch an idea for a promo for Jan or for Robbie or for somebody else, and first thing I do is I pop my phone on and I pop on my memo and I start talking. A lot of my promos and a lot of my shoots are because I get an idea in the middle of the day or middle of the night or whatever, and I just start talking. It's like, when they talk about writers write, when you get an idea, you got to write it down. Well, when I'm shooting at somebody or I'm got to cut a promo or something, then, that's what I do. But if you can find good writers to work with, like I did, and like I'm trying to be for others, it can make this game a lot more than just a game. It's not just, we always talk about the hobby. It's all about the game and talk about this. And, we make a lot of relationships. Most are good, some are bad, but you even the ones that were bad, you learn from. And that's the whole idea. If you can make something out of nothing, which is what we do,
That's exactly what we do.
It can be very gratifying. It can be very good for the soul. It can be very good in the long run.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. Is there anything else you want to put over? Anything else you want to plug before we go?
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that people get the character. I'm happy that people enjoy, whether it's a shoot at me or whether it's honest admiration or whatever. I'm just here to help everybody play. I'm just here to have fun. I don't look at myself as being that old guy who's been in this business for 25 years, but I've enjoyed the last 3 years of being on here, even though, there's a lot of handlers. Like I said, I'm older than some of the handlers that are in this game, and it's a little unnerving at times to try to remember. I get I get picked on a little bit because I'll try to use, Jan trying to use something that's, very, very urban or very or very modern on a call, like saying you got somebody with a side boo or whatever. I'm like, I don't say that every day, but it sounds so crazy that it might just work. But it's, I enjoy having fun. I enjoy working in EWC with Robbie. I enjoy working in Limitless and Overpowered with Jana. Jan's all over the place. He's also working at Squires. So, the biggest thing is just take a step, enjoy working with people. If you don't find the one you can't work with right off, find somebody else. And don't forget, we're all here for a reason. We're all here. We're all part of the family. We may all be crazy uncles and crazy aunts or the third cousins or whatever, but we're all part of the wrestling family, and that's what matters. So, hit me up anytime if you've got a new wrestler you want to start with, or you need a character change, or you want to change your angle or change something else. I'm not hard to find. I'm easy to catch. And, I'll put my 2 cents in. I may not be the right 2 cents, but I'll give you my 2 cents regardless.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks again for joining us, and we really appreciate your time.
Glad to be a part of it. Thanks.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for another edition of the Efed podcast here on the Atomic Dropcast Network. Don't forget to check out the Atomic Dropcast. We're re-airing the entire Season 1 over on YouTube, dropping an episode a week. Check us out. I think we're on episode 6 or 7 now. Just search the Atomic Dropcast on the YouTube bar or go to theatomicdropcast.com. We're also available anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to check out the EWC at ewc4life.com. Those guys are awesome. Don't forget to check out defiancewrestling.com. If you're looking for a good angle fed, that's the place to be. I mean, even Dwayne thinks so. We also want to thank Chris for coming on the show and telling us all about his history as Jan Van Der Roost, as well as the Squires Academy. And I want to thank every one of you out there for listening to the Efed podcast, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.